Right, I heard. Quorum is present. I call the regular meeting of the Jefferson Transit Board Authority Board order at 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. We'll start with a roll call of board members, and let's start with folks in the room.
Thomas, City of Port Townsend.
Vivian Keel, Cosine School District.
John Millock, Port Townsend School District. Online, Greg, let's start.
Greg Brotherton, District 3, Jefferson County Commissioner.
Heidi Eisenhower, District 2, Jefferson County Commissioner. Heather Dudley Nolet, District 1, Jefferson County Commissioner.
That is the funniest roll call I've seen in a while, for sure. Okay, JTA staff.
Nicole Gauthier, General Manager, Jefferson Transit.
Miranda Nash, Finance Manager, Jefferson Transit.
Kelly Olson, Marketing and Outreach Manager, Jefferson Transit.
Desiree Williams, Maintenance Manager, Jefferson Transit.
Jamie Broke, Grants and Procurement Coordinator, Jefferson Transit.
Amanda Watkins, Clerk of the Board, Jefferson Transit. Dakota Brook, Customer Service, Jefferson Transit.
Thanks. So we'll start with public comment. Would anyone from the public like to comment not related to today's public hearing? If you're joining online, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
I have no hands raised.
Right. So consent agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting, November 4th. If there are no questions, I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we're going to open the public hearing now. We're opening the public hearing for the draft 2026 capital and operating budgets. The purpose of the hearing is to invite testimony from members of the public regarding our 2026 proposed operating and capital budget. The public hearing will proceed as follows: comments and questions from the board, public testimony, closing the public hearing, and then the proposed budget is presented at the November 4th meeting. So we'll start with board questions or comments.
I have a couple. Really good work. I mean, I was sorry to miss the last meeting. I had a conflict that I had to share at a different meeting, but it's really strong. To Miranda and the whole team, really kudos. One compliment. I know you've been working on your visual storytelling, and the exploded pie charts were so easy to read, so communicative, really top notch. And like when I first started reading the sales tax, the revenue projections, the narrative part, I was like, uh-oh, this doesn't seem right. Just that's the one part of the messaging, it seemed fairly optimistic. And then I looked at, I guess, the chart of last year's budget projections to actual. And that's, I mean, I guess there was a distinction in there I was uncertain about. I should get to the actual page. It was our actual revenue last year was much higher than we budgeted, right?
Yes. So what I'm trying to move away from is this methodology of budgeting based on the previous year's budget, because when the actuals come in, it's not reflective of what we budgeted, especially if it comes in very high. And if it comes in a lot lower than what we projected in our budget, I want to be basing it off of actuals, and our actuals came in much higher than what we budgeted. So moving forward, the budget to budget change is this much, but what we're doing is looking at what our actuals in order to project out what 2026 would be. So,
and I really appreciate that.
Yes.
That's great. My question about this is, I thought the 10.6 increase in revenues was over last year's budget, not over last year's actuals. I was wondering if you could explain, did I understand that correctly?
Yes. So the expected 10.3 is from the 8.4 in 2025 to the 9.2 in 2026. It's using the actual 2025 collections with an anticipated 3% increase. So it is a budget to budget figure, but that 9.2 is based off the actuals that we received. So the 8.4 to the 9.2 is budget to budget. But the 9.2 projections are based off what we actually received in 25. So instead of just doing a 3% increase of 2025's budget into 26, we're using what we actually received this year. And that is a projected figure, but sales tax is still very strong and keeps getting stronger. So I'd love to be more pessimistic about it.
Well, I mean, I'm just, this is the most optimistic budget I think all of us are going to encounter at any budget cycle this year, probably. But we're hearing very different projections about the sales tax trajectories with kind of the end of a lot of the big capital projects that have buoyed the sales tax over the last couple of years. So I don't think that your actual projections are inaccurate, and I've teased and appreciated your conservative approach, but just that one sentence that just seemed a little Pollyannish for Miranda.
Well, I appreciate that, and I am more pessimistic about it than I kind of presented in my budget book, but based on the historic data that we've been getting, I feel like my attitude towards it has not been as accurate as possible. So I am trying to be a little bit more optimistic going into 2026. I do agree that based on the opinions and the actual historic data in 25 that other counties transit agencies have seen, they're seeing flat changes. So it's more close to 0% in 25. So it could be closer to that. It's a weird place to be in Jefferson County because our economy is like 1 to 2 years behind everything else. So it's hard to find to use other places as the trend of what we're seeing, because we're always coming in kind of in the aftermath of that.
I just want to finish my thought though, because you're projecting less sales tax than last year. You're just projecting it higher than the budget, but so that's the confusing bit to me, and I'll pass it off to Heidi. Sorry, but you're like right on page 7 says the budget for last year was 8.5 million projected, and then we got 9.46, and this year you project 9.278 in sales tax revenue. So I don't know.
So it's what the sales that is my conservative approach coming out there, because the 10.34% is budget to budget, but I did use sales tax actuals to calculate the 2026 budget. So that's why it's increased, but it is still I guess I have to pull up my sheet to go back to it. There's so many factors that come into it, but I can double check.
Sorry, but
on it.
Really, I love it. I'll pass it over to Heidi. I have a few more specific notes.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'll go back and double check my figures and how I calculated it. But I do know that my thought process was straying away from budget to budget and looking at actuals. And maybe that's where my conservative approach came in, that my projections for 25, that's the 9.4 million. So that we're still over budget in 25. But you're right, it's slightly under what 25 would be projecting into 26. So I'll go back and just double check my calculations on that as we fine tune for our final draft.
Cool.
I was curious about the, I'm getting down to the page, sorry, scrolling around here. Let's see, it's page 14 of the PDF. The 2026 operating top line page, and where you talk about increased labor expenses and employee benefits. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those 25-ish% increases are? Are those more people? Those just, I'd like to know more about what's behind that.
Is this on
Page 9 of
9? Okay, page
Mhm.
9. So the labor expenses are projected to increase by 24.35%. That is added. So that's our COLA cost that comes in, the 2.5 for everyone. Sorry, is it 3? It's 3% for all staff. And then our non-represented staff with the salary schedule that we have the 2.5 performance evaluation step increases. So the labor salary and cost, the salary costs will go up. But in addition to that, we have added positions because of the added service that we're planning on putting in 26. So Sunday is on the table come June. And then we also have multimodal, some other service increases that we're looking at is it Brennan and Tri-Area?
No, looking at the possibility of on-demand or microtransit, which will require more, but that the heavy lift there is Sunday service.
Yeah.
And making sure that we have
More
enough
drivers.
staff and the drivers, dispatchers, maintenance,
On-call supervisors. And then we're actually needing another dispatcher position to accommodate the change in the work week.
Okay, that's what I just wanted the story behind it. Thank you. I'll take my hand down.
I have a question for the board in regards to sales tax. Would you like Miranda and I to go back and be more conservative in our estimations of sales tax? Is there a desire from the board for us to do that?
I'm curious.
It's to me, I think Miranda's appropriately conservative. I feel a little bit of mixed messaging in that first bit, and I think I already expressed that. But no, I think the conservative approach is great, and I'm yeah. I'll see if others have anything else.
I don't think it's necessary.
I had
Yeah,
just,
I mean, I feel the sort of desire to be really precise about this and clear in the messaging. So I think that's really worth listening to what Commissioner Brotherton is saying here, and just looking at that and making sure that it's that the wording is clear. So because what we're seeing right now, certainly in our budget, is giving us a lot of pause, and so I think that the message that the community is going to see from the various different agencies, it's helpful if it's really clear and consistent. So I agree that it's a little, you're not quite sure what the message is from the wording, so that's worth looking at. But I also feel like you're pretty bang on in terms of your projection, and I appreciate the way you explained it, your thinking process.
I had kind of a general comment, which was appreciated. I think that the board has been communicating the message for a while that we'd like to take this kind of budget surplus that we have and convert it into increased services. And this budget feels to me like you're doing that. And I think also, putting some of those technology pieces in place that'll help riders to know what's going on with our buses and where they are, and hopefully give the board more accurate information about who's getting on and getting off. I think all those things are really important, and I really appreciate seeing those in this budget.
Yeah, I'd love to just amplify John's point. I think it's really appropriate. It has given me pause, and I've mentioned it before, to see that 5-year projection out there with over $2 million of net revenue per year. We want to make sure that we use it, and I think especially as we come up against fiscal cliffs in other agencies. It makes me appreciate even more kind of the measured approach to developing and raising the level of service. And I really appreciate, I think Sunday service and the Gateway Project, all of these are really responsive to the requests. I guess one question just kind of on the heels of that, I wasn't sure if the e-transit vans and the cutaways were electric, because I mean, I know electrification is another program that doesn't have a lot of immediate ROI, but I appreciate the long-term investment.
Yeah, we have one electric dial-a-ride vehicle that we have on site. We still need to finish prepping it to get it out into service, but we did receive a grant for another. So we will be bringing that to the board in December for approval. So we will have 2 electric dial-a-ride vehicles. We will be bringing a request for 3 JTOC vehicles that we received grant funding for. They are not electric, and that is really due to our constraint in Forks and our ability to charge and not owning property and having charging infrastructure. But I think the board was loud and clear with the intent of making sure that we are investigating all electric options and bringing those forth. So yes, our dial-a-ride vehicles right now are electric. That's what we're coming to the board with, and excited to let the board know how that's going. Once we get it out, get them out on the road, because only time will tell. And how do we need to make those vehicles fit with our operations? That's something that ops will be working on.
I have another general comment about the budget. I like what John about putting money into service. But the trouble with service is it's an ongoing expense. And if your budget goes down, you're between a rock and a hard place. And this budget has enough of those concrete things in it that if it falls away, it's okay to cover the service part. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking from it.
Well, and I appreciate that line of thinking, because as we're looking at technology projects, the initial startup is coming out of capital, and then sustaining those things through, into the future comes from operating. So we want to be very careful when we're adding to our operating budget, so that if we need to scale back, we're not necessarily scaling back on service, but
I
on
want to flip flop on the service.
yeah. So we are paying very close attention to, the community is really asking for where's my bus. That's very expensive. A mobile app, that's very expensive. So how can we be doing incorporating some of those technologies in a really responsible way, where if sales tax drastically decreases, if our grant funding decreases, that we'll be able to sustain. And that's kind of always what's on staff's mind, is how do we sustain what we've invested in?
All right. Any other board comments or questions? Okay.
I asked a lot of my questions in the last run through of it.
So we're going to move on to public testimony. Does anyone choose to give public testimony? If you're online, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. People wishing to give testimony are asked to speak clearly and state their full name and place of residence.
I have no hands up.
Is there anybody listening?
They're not. No one online.
What? That's great.
Tree falls in the woods.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll all dial in later.
So I'm going to close this hearing. The hearing on the 2026 proposed operating capital budget is now closed. The final action will take place by resolution at the next board meeting on December 16th, And next, we're going to have an executive session. So the board will now meet in confidential executive session for discussing the annual general manager performance evaluation as allowed by RCW 4230-110-1G to review the performance of a public employee. Board members will remain in the Zoom meeting for the executive session. The clerk will stop the recording and remove all non-board members and then lock the meeting. So once the meeting's locked, you won't be able to get back in. So please stay on the line. Board members are asked to not leave the executive session. After the executive session concludes, the clerk will end the Zoom and restart it with a Zoom link for the regular meeting. The board will potentially take further action following the executive session, and the board will be in executive session until, let's say, 2:25. So about 35 minutes. So the board is extending the executive session for a period of 20 minutes. So we will be back in session at 2:47 p.m. Okay, the executive session has been adjourned and I'm calling the regular meeting back to order at 2:50 p.m. And the chair will entertain a motion to approve the evaluation of the general manager as submitted and a salary increase of COLA plus 2 steps.
I am happy to make that motion. That's Heidi.
I will second. Oh, Ben can second. A third.
4. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the general manager evaluation and salary increase. Any discussion before we vote?
Thanks for your work, Nicole, and your leadership. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
I will miss working.
Oh,
You can come to the meeting.
Be one of the
Yeah,
attendees.
Ben. And we'll miss you too, so you'll have to come to the meetings.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the evaluation and salary increase. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for everything. All right, with that, we will adjourn our meeting.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, you guys.
Have fun at Wasack.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
2:52.
Thank you.
Yeah.